58 seconds. That's all it took. A lone Sabra light tank tearing through a line of derelict hulls at Crow Valley, then spinning around to sprint back under cover. It was a blink-and-you-miss-it moment, but it reverberated halfway across the world. Within an hour, that short clip was lighting up Weibo. China's state media was already calling it a hostile show of force, and practically half of defense Twitter was scratching its head, asking the same question. Why on earth is Beijing losing sleep over a tank that weighs less than a city bus? Seriously, what's the big deal? Because context, my friends, is absolutely everything. For the better part of the last decade, China's Coast Guard cutters and its sprawling maritime militia have been playing a dangerous game of chicken, nudging, ramming, and even water cannoning Philippine resupply missions off Second Thomas Shoal. Manila's usual, rather restrained response? A stiff diplomatic protest and a photo, usually a blurry one, of a rusty Sierra-class hull. But this week, the reply wasn't a memo. It came in a deafening 105mm caliber. The Philippine Army's brand-new Sabra light tank, built by Israel's renowned Elbit Systems, fired its very first public barrage during the closing phase of KTEX, Katihan 02, 2025. This wasn't just a tank demo, it was a comprehensive combined arms exercise that also saw 155mm Atmos howitzers and 81mm mortars raining down fire across the same range. Beijing, it seems, didn't just see a training event. It saw an underdog, tired of getting pushed around, strapping on some serious brass knuckles, and flexing a newfound muscle. It was a clear, unambiguous signal that the rules of engagement, at least from Manila's perspective, might just be changing. Alright, let's get a little technical, but don't worry, we'll keep it eye-glaze free. The Sabra isn't your typical lumbering main battle tank. Instead, it's a nimble, 30-ton, 8-wheel drive platform. What makes that crucial for an archipelago nation like the Philippines? It's sheer transportability. This machine can be slung inside a C-130 Hercules transport aircraft and dropped onto a mere 200-meter dirt strip. Think about that for a second. Rapid deployment across thousands of islands, often with limited infrastructure. That's a game changer. Its 105mm gun isn't just for show either. It fires NATO standard high explosive and APFSDS. Armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot rounds. These aren't just glorified firecrackers, they can punch through 500mm of steel, good enough to seriously scar, if not outright shred, a Chinese Type 96B tank. Add to that a state-of-the-art thermal sight that can spot tank-sized targets from 5 kilometers away, and a sophisticated battlefield management system that talks seamlessly to both aircraft and ships. What you have isn't just a tank. You have a highly mobile scout that can also seriously brawl. For an army that until very recently still listed World War II-era M3 half-tracks in its active inventory, this Sabra isn't just an upgrade, it's a generational leap, a quantum jump into modern warfare capabilities. It signals a serious commitment to defending its territorial integrity with credible, modern firepower. The speed of Beijing's reaction was almost as impressive as the tank's performance. Within 3 hours of the first photos hitting the Philippine Army's Facebook page, China's Global Times had a 900-word piece ready to go. It quoted an unnamed senior colonel, always conveniently unnamed, who wasted no time warning Manila against externalizing its insecurity. This wasn't just a news report, it was the opening salvo in a carefully orchestrated narrative. Soon after, the South China Sea Probing Initiative, an analytics outlet with clear ties to the University of Hainan, superimposed the Sabra's silhouette over a map of Thitu Island, one of the disputed features in the Spratlys. Their provocative question: is the Philippines preparing for a Taiwan contingency? The message was clear, direct, and designed to resonate with multiple audiences. These aren't merely defensive drills, they are part of a larger US scripted slide toward containment of China. By nightfall, CCTV, China's state broadcaster, had looped the footage of the tank twice, each time freeze-framing the powerful recoil. The goal here is classic narrative shaping. Take a limited terrain exercise, intended to boost national defense, and twist it into evidence of creeping NATO influence in Southeast Asia. This propaganda serves multiple purposes. It rallies domestic support, casts the Philippines as a dangerous provocateur, and attempts to sow doubt among other ASEAN nations about Manila's intentions. It's a masterclass in information warfare, where perception is often more potent than reality. Here's why a 30-tonner, even a light one, complicates Beijing's carefully constructed chessboard. China's entire playbook in the South China Sea relies on keeping violence just below the threshold that would trigger the US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. It's a calculated strategy, a game of inches. Swarming fishing boats and those seemingly innocent white-hulled Coast Guard ships might look non-military on cable news, but they deliver a potent, constant dose of coercion and intimidation. They're designed to wear down resistance without sparking an open conflict. But a light tank, like the Sabra, deployed to a strategic location like Palawan or northern Luzon, that changes the equation entirely. While it doesn't directly threaten airstrips or ports in the same way a bomber or a warship might, its presence signals something far more profound. It tells Beijing that Manila is willing to harden its targets with lethal, conventional firepower. This subtle shift significantly raises the possible cost of any landing, even a so-called militia accident. It forces military planners in Hainan to treat Philippine soil not as an empty, undefended runway, but as a contested zone, a place where their actions could meet with deadly, organized resistance. It introduces a new layer of risk and uncertainty into China's calculations, something they've largely avoided until now. The Sabra acquisition isn't an isolated incident, it's just one tile in a much larger, increasingly complex mosaic of Philippine defense modernization. Manila is also fielding India's formidable BrahMos shore-based anti-ship missiles, capable of sinking even large warships from afar. They're welcoming South Korea's sleek Jose Rizal-class frigates into their naval fleet, significantly upgrading their maritime patrol and combat capabilities. And of course, there's America's advanced Spider air defense system, providing a crucial protective umbrella. When you stack these layers, ship killers guarding the coasts, sophisticated air defenders protecting the skies, and now mobile, hard-hitting tanks securing the land, the Philippine archipelago starts to look less like a vulnerable plankton feeder and more like a bristling porcupine. Beijing's strategists, astute as they are, understand that deterrence is fundamentally cumulative. Every extra kilometer of effective range, every new layer of defensive capability, shrinks the maneuver room for their Coast Guard, limits the reach of their Navy, and perhaps most importantly, undermines their long-held narrative of inevitable dominance in the South China Sea. It's a strategic reorientation, slowly but surely, that changes the regional power dynamic. The Philippines isn't alone in this strategic awakening. Vietnam, for instance, is watching with quiet, perhaps even approving interest. Hanoi's own T-90S fleet has been rumbling through its central highlands for years, a testament to their own commitment to modernizing ground forces. Indonesia just sealed a massive deal for 42 Rafale fighter jets, and is eyeing substantial upgrades for its Leopard 2 tanks. Even Thailand, which already fields VT-4 tanks from China, sent observers to Crow Valley, clearly interested in what their neighbor was up to. There's a palpable armor renaissance sweeping across the region, and the Philippine test fire is arguably the loudest, most public demonstration of this trend so far. This isn't about individual nations, it's about a collective shift. Beijing's diplomats and military planners now face a burgeoning chain of increasingly capable middle powers, rather than a scattering of lightly armed constabulary units that can be easily dismissed. This regional modernization, driven by shared concerns about rising Chinese assertiveness, fundamentally alters the strategic landscape. Now let's keep things in perspective. Let's not pretend that a mere 18 Sabra platforms are suddenly going to sink a Chinese carrier group. That's not their role, nor their capability. Their real profound value is far more political and psychological. They give Manila a legitimate seat at the conventional deterrence table. They provide a tangible, credible threat that forces a recalculation. However, here's the rub. Nationalist voices inside China, ever eager to fan the flames, can and will spin any capability bump, no matter how modest, into a Philippine provocation. This, in turn, ratchets up pressure on Chinese leaders to respond, to project strength. The next water cannon spray from a Chinese vessel, which might ordinarily be seen as mere harassment, could very easily be framed domestically as righteous retaliation. Escalation, unfortunately, is rarely a linear process. Sometimes it follows the loudest headline, the most inflammatory social media post, or the most hawkish editorial. The danger lies in this cycle of perceived provocation and retaliatory action, where miscalculation becomes a very real and present threat. It's a delicate dance, this balancing act. Philippine Defense Secretary Teodoro has been quick to insist that these tanks are purely defensive. But it's worth noting that he conducted the media tour in English, not Tagalog. A subtle yet unmistakable implicit nod to Washington, Canberra, and Tokyo. The subtext for these allies is clear. We are spending your donated military financing wisely, and crucially, we can interoperate with your forces. We're serious about defense. At the very same time, however, the Philippine envoy to Beijing met with Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong just 2 days after the live-fire demo to reaffirm bilateral dialogue on fisheries. Talk about sending mixed signals. Messaging to two very different and often opposing audiences at once is a high-wire act of diplomacy. The Sabra's tow cables, in a rather ironic twist, have just become part of that precarious balancing pole, adding weight and significance to every diplomatic utterance and military maneuver. Manila is trying to show strength without completely closing the door on dialogue, a difficult tightrope walk in an increasingly tense region. So what can we expect to see unfold in the wake of this tank test? Look for 3 distinct trends. First, anticipate more joint live-fire exercises, particularly with the U.S. Army's Stryker units or Marine Littoral Regiments. Both of these American forces also field 105mm mobile guns, making them ideal partners for Manila to practice cross-loading ammunition, sharing digital maps, and integrating battlefield communications. This interoperability is key to strengthening alliances. Second, don't be surprised if China responds symmetrically or at least appears to. Expect to see more of their Type 15 light tanks parked on fiery cross-reef airstrips or other contested features. This kind of tit-for-tat deployment helps Beijing claim its actions are merely reactive, mirroring the Philippines' provocations. Third, and perhaps most predictably, watch for a significant spike in propaganda about Philippine militarism and aggression, likely timed to coincide with the next ASEAN summit. Manila will undoubtedly lobby for a tougher, more unified stance on the South China Sea, and Beijing will work overtime to undermine that effort. The information war, it's clear, will run parallel to any actual steel-on-steel buildup, each influencing the other in this escalating regional drama. So, is a light tank truly enough to change the balance of power in such a complex geopolitical landscape? Or is this all just nationalist theater playing out on both sides? What's your take? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Beijing will double down on its gray zone tactics? Or are we about to witness an actual armor race across those disputed reefs? And hey, if you want an even deeper dive into the Philippines' significant missile upgrades next, make sure to smash that subscribe button and stay tuned for our next episode. 58 seconds of sustained fire at Crow Valley did far more than simply vent high-pressure gas from a tank cannon. It vented the long-held myth that the Philippines must passively accept a second-class status in its own sovereign waters. Beijing's swift, seething reaction isn't just about military hardware. It shows that the tank test hit a nerve in their carefully constructed narrative, not just dirt. Whether the Sabra ever fires in anger in a real conflict remains unknowable, a chilling prospect we all hope to avoid. But that it has already profoundly altered the psychological chessboard, forcing new calculations and challenging old assumptions, is beyond dispute. In the high-stakes game being played out in the South China Sea, perception alone can often be payload enough, and this time, Manila delivered it with a powerful 8-wheeled punch.